Most people would have laughed if they had known what Emily Carter had just done. She had spent every dollar she had left, $5,500 on 42 acres of dry, abandoned farmland that everyone in the county believed was beyond saving. The soil was cracked like broken pottery. The old farmhouse leaned slightly to one side, its white paint faded into gray after decades of neglect. Rusted fencing surrounded empty fields where nothing taller than stubborn weeds had grown in more than 30 years. The seller barely tried to hide his relief when she signed the papers. "Good luck," he said with a smile that felt strangely rehearsed. Emily simply nodded. Luck had stopped meaning much to her long ago. Only 18 months earlier, she had been living in a small apartment outside Columbus with her husband, David, and their 10-year-old son, Noah. David had worked as a mechanic. Emily had managed the office of a local landscaping company. Their life wasn't luxurious, but it was comfortable, predictable, and filled with ordinary dreams. Then David was diagnosed with cancer. Everything changed within weeks. Hospital visits replaced family vacations. Savings disappeared faster than anyone expected. Emily sold jewelry, emptied retirement accounts, and even borrowed against their car just to keep up with treatment costs. Through it all, David never complained. He apologized instead, telling Emily he was sorry she had to carry so much. She always answered the same way. "We're carrying it together." But eventually she wasn't. David passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning while Emily held his hand. The silence afterward was louder than anything she had ever heard. After paying medical bills and settling debts, almost nothing remained. Friends encouraged her to stay in the city. Her sister begged her to move in temporarily. Even Noah quietly asked if everything was going to be okay. Emily promised him it would. She wasn't sure she believed it herself. One evening, while searching through online property listings, she found an advertisement almost no one else had opened. For sale, 42 acres. Cash only. As is. $5,500. The price seemed impossible. When she drove to see it, she immediately understood why. The farmhouse needed repairs. The barn roof had partially collapsed. The windmill hadn't turned in years. Even the air felt strangely still. A local gas station clerk noticed the address on her map. "Don't waste your time," he warned. "That place died before I was born." Emily smiled politely but kept driving. Sometimes people confuse abandoned with worthless. Standing in the middle of the empty field, she closed her eyes. There was no traffic. No sirens. No apartment walls separating her from neighbors. Only wind. For the first time since David died, she could hear herself think. She bought the farm 3 days later. Word traveled quickly through the county. At the diner, conversations stopped whenever she entered. People weren't cruel. They simply looked at her with quiet sympathy. Poor woman. She doesn't know what she bought. On moving day, an old pickup truck slowly pulled onto the property. An elderly man climbed out wearing faded denim overalls and a weathered straw hat. He introduced himself as Walter Hayes. "I've lived around here my whole life." Emily expected another warning about the land. Instead, Walter studied the fields for a long moment before smiling. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes the worst land remembers what people try to forget." Emily frowned. "I'm sorry." Walter only tipped his hat. "You'll understand someday." Then he drove away. That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about those words. What exactly was the land supposed to remember? The next morning, while Noah explored the old barn looking for anything worth saving, Emily began repairing a section of broken fence near the eastern edge of the property. As she pulled away decades of tangled weeds, her shovel struck stone. She assumed it was just another buried rock. Instead, she uncovered a perfectly shaped marker standing upright beneath the soil. It wasn't part of any fence. It wasn't a gravestone. It looked deliberately placed. Curious, she walked another 100 yards. There was another one. Same size. Same weathered stone. Same careful alignment. By sunset, she had found 6 of them stretching across the property in a nearly perfect line. None appeared on the county survey she received during the sale. Someone had hidden them. And suddenly, Walter's strange words didn't seem quite so mysterious anymore. Emily barely slept that night. At sunrise, she walked back to the line of stone markers with a notebook, measuring tape, and the county survey map folded beneath her arm. One by one, she measured the distance between each marker. The spacing was almost perfectly even, as though someone had planned every inch with great care. Yet none of them appeared on the official map. Later that afternoon, Walter Hayes returned. He looked at the uncovered stones without surprise. Instead, his shoulders sagged, as if he had been carrying this moment for decades. "I hoped you would find them," he admitted quietly. Emily crossed her arms. "Then tell me what they mean." Walter hesitated before reaching into his truck and removing an old leather journal wrapped in faded cloth. "It belonged to the first family that worked this farm," he said. "Maybe it'll answer more than I ever could." Most of the journal contained ordinary entries about weather, crops, livestock, and family life. But when Emily reached the final section, she froze. The last 20 pages had been cut out with remarkable precision. Not torn. Removed. Someone had wanted those pages to disappear forever. Instead of satisfying her curiosity, the journal deepened it. The following morning, Emily drove to the county archives. Dust-covered ledgers filled the shelves, and an elderly clerk helped her locate decades-old property records. She noticed something unusual. The ownership of the farm had changed hands several times, but every sale happened unusually fast. No family had kept the land for very long, even during years when nearby farms prospered. It made no sense. As she copied several records, she felt someone watching her. Outside the courthouse, the man who had sold her the farm stood beside his truck. His smile from closing day was gone. "You've got what you paid for," he said flatly. "No reason to dig into old history." Emily replied calmly, "History belongs to everyone." He stared at her for several seconds before driving away. That evening she returned home to another surprise. The barn door was hanging open. Nothing valuable had been stolen. Instead, every folder containing her copied land records had vanished. Her tools remained untouched. Her generator was still there. Only the documents were missing. The next morning she found an envelope tucked beneath the farmhouse door. Inside was a single typed sentence. "Some things were buried for a reason. Leave them buried." No signature. No return address. Emily felt fear for the first time since buying the farm. But fear slowly became determination. If someone was willing to break into her barn just to steal old records, then the truth had to be worth protecting. A week later, another unexpected visitor arrived. His name was Harold Benson, a retired county surveyor. "I heard you've been asking questions," he said. Emily invited him inside. Harold unfolded an aging topographical map across the kitchen table. "This map was never included with public records," he explained. His finger stopped near the exact line of stone markers. "What you're looking at isn't a property boundary." Emily leaned closer. "Then what is it?" Harold took a long breath. "Those stones marked the route of an underground spring." Emily's eyes widened. "But everyone says this farm dried up decades ago." Harold slowly shook his head. "That's the lie." He explained that the spring had never naturally disappeared. Nearly 50 years earlier, several influential landowners fought bitterly over water rights during an extended drought. Rather than face years of lawsuits and financial ruin, they reached a secret agreement. The spring would be sealed. The records would quietly disappear. Future buyers would believe the farm had always been worthless. Generation after generation, the truth stayed hidden beneath the soil. Emily sat in stunned silence. She hadn't accidentally purchased the county's worst farm. She had unknowingly bought the one piece of land powerful families never wanted anyone to investigate. As Harold packed away the map, he looked directly at her. "If you keep going," he warned gently, "people won't just think you're chasing an old story. They'll think you're uncovering theirs." That evening Emily stood alone in the middle of the dry field. The setting sun painted long shadows across the cracked earth. For the first time, she no longer saw dead land. She saw a secret waiting to breathe again. Somewhere beneath her feet, water was still flowing. And for the first time in decades, someone finally knew where to look.